It is difficult to find a job in a provincial town, and where there is unemployment, drunkenness often flourishes. There are a lot of dysfunctional families. Alexander Bychkov grew up exactly like this. A drinking father hanged himself at the age of 40. The mother alone raised two sons, Sasha and Sergei. Although how she brought up a lover of drinking a bottle, she often left the boys to their blind grandmother. And she walked with one, then with another boyfriend. And then she had a third child with a visiting Tajik. Irina Bychkova's roommates changed, the children were left to themselves. Sasha was always in charge of the house. It was he who literally dragged Ruslan's younger brother in his teeth. It was he who took 2 years of academic leave to care for 20-year-old Sergei when he got into intensive care. According to one version, he got caught stealing, hid from the police, jumped out of the car and broke his head. According to another, he was beaten by local punks. It was he who worked part-time as a watchman, then at a car wash, so that there was money in the family. That's why no one can still believe that the modest, quiet Sasha, who was not really friends with anyone, but always ran home after school and work, killed people. Yes, he was not up to it, the residents of the town say with one voice. At the same time, few people remember that Bychkov from such a life began to drink more often, swear with his mother and leave home. In the year 2009, his grandmother was taken to her by a relative from a neighboring village. Alexander moved into an empty house. In the same year, the first person in the Belinsky Penza region disappeared. Yevgeny Zhidkov, who came from a neighboring village to Belinsky for documents for registration of a pension, was met by Bychkov in Central Park. He was sitting on a bench and drinking beer. Word for word, and Evgeny Sergeyevich, as Bychkov respectfully called him, turned up at his house. No one else saw the liquid. They didn't rush to look for him for the simple reason that no one knew him here. After a while, Irina Bychkova's roommate Vladimir Berezovsky disappeared. He was once an exemplary family man. A beautiful wife, Nastenka's daughter, was growing up. Vodka ruined Vladimir. He left his family and began to live with the Bychkovs. He could shout at his sons, but without malice, says Bychkov's mother. When he disappeared, they asked me where he could be. Then friends said that his head had been found in a nearby village. The townspeople discussed this news and forgot. The police had another hangover. Very soon a new misfortune fell. A local guy, Alexei Kutuzov, was killed. He was working in Moscow, came to his parents in Belinsky, and went for cigarettes and disappeared. A body stabbed with a knife was found in the city center. Then 2 more locals disappeared. Lev Andreev and Yevgeny Marsharov last saw Kutuzov with the local weirdo Alexander Zhukov, so the police detained him. Mentally unhealthy, prone to fantasizing, Zhukov, imagining himself a hero, confessed that he really killed an acquaintance. The investigation wanted to send him to more cases about the missing Andreev and Marsh. But only one thing was proved in court. Zhulov was sent for compulsory treatment to the city of Kamyshin, Volgograd region, where he is still. It was only the following summer that people started disappearing again. It was as if a conveyor belt was working in the city to destroy people whose bodies could not be found in any way. Other residents of Belinsky left and did not return. Arkady Arakelian, Vladimir Turasev, Sergei Lysyanin, Sergei Sukharov. Do you think there is a panic in the city? Were they afraid to go outside and locked the children's houses? Nothing like that. Relatives, who of the missing had them here, wrote a statement and complained that the police were not working well. Others joked that there was a man who cleanses their city of drunks. The head of the local police department, Igor Svechnikov, has been in his post for 11 months. The cases of missing people got to him in the load along with the position. The number of suspects reached up to 500 people. The wanted notice was given to local districts, he says. Bychkov was interrogated when his stepfather Berezovsky disappeared, but they could not prove that his stepson had a hand in it. Usually a brilliant plan fails by accident. So it is here. Bychkov got caught on theft. The day before, he had a big fight with his mother, because he got drunk once again and even raised his hand against his brother Sergei. Irina stood up for her son, who was left disabled due to a head injury. You're always protecting him, Bychkov shouted in a rush. And you don't need me. That night, he broke a window in a hardware store and stole 3 knives from there. They tied him up right away. Bychkov hoped to the last that he got off with a suspended sentence. But the police came to his house with a search. It was then that it turned out that, most likely, they took not a thief, but a maniac, whom they had been looking for 3 years. During the search, the operatives found Bychkov's diary, in which he complained of hopelessness. "I am a worthless person," he wrote. "Achieved nothing." And he really wanted to be famous. But the quiet boy, who in the same diary came up with the nickname Rambo, chose Chikatilo and Hitler as his idols. I saw that he cut out newspaper articles about Chikatilo, the Bitsevsky maniac, the Ryazan maniac who locked 2 girls in his basement. Bychkov's mother confesses. She asked, "Sasha, why do you need all this?" He said, "Mom, this is history. We will die, and someone after us will find my clippings, and will know what happened." Irina Bychkova was not alarmed by her son's strange hobby. And she wasn't up to it. With her next husband, she opened a retail outlet in the market. The family needed money. Meanwhile, the son, who wanted to go down in history as his heroes, went out to catch the next victim. In the found diary, which was taken as evidence and attached to the materials of the criminal case, 11 murders are indicated. Date and short description of the massacre. Without names, surnames and motives. Bychkov prepared thoroughly for each of his crimes. "I bought vodka, knives, and went hunting." As he later admitted during interrogations, he liked to lure a person into a trap and deal with him. "Vova and we sang in Grandma's garden." With undisguised pleasure, he talked about the hereditary experiment of bulls. "When I saw that he was already passing out, I took a knife out of my inner pocket and hit Vova under the jaw with it. I killed the 8th one on the threshold, then dragged him into the house and threw him into the basement. He lay there for 2 days. It was hot. He started calling. Then I pulled it out, wrapped it in a blanket, took it out into the garden, and threw it into a garbage pit." He dismembered some of his victims and ate their livers. After such confessions, excavations were organized in the town. Hands, legs, heads, tortured bodies began to be found all over Belinsky. In the garden of Bychkov, not far from the hospital behind the church. In parts, it was easier for the killer to carry the victims. He's a squishy guy, and would never have coped with hefty men if they hadn't been drunk to unconsciousness. But the stories about the eaten organs may well turn out to be fiction. Experts say that Bychkov simply flaunts his cruelty. In order to divert suspicion from himself, the maniac killed exclusively in the warm season, from May to September, when Tajik builders passed through the town for the season. By the way, the investigation initially had a version that one of the guest workers was operating. Bychkov's victims were not familiar with each other, but some of them turned out to be drinking companions of the mother. Wasn't that the reason for the brutal murders? After all, the maniac chose only men who liked to drink hard. If he wanted to assert himself, to show his strength, why didn't he trap children and girls, as his idol Chikatilo did? Most likely, she left an imprint of her mother's cohabitation with different partners, suggests forensic expert Mikhail Vinogradov. Every maniac has his own idea. He chooses a certain type of people. For example, in Moscow, the maniac Maria Petrova killed drinking men of similar appearance, because one of them attacked her once. And the Bitsevsky maniac chose men, because he had a grudge against his grandfather. In the case of the Belinsky maniac, his upbringing matters. The cruelty of her mother, the numerous lovers she brought home and drank with. The investigation is considering other versions. Bychkov could avenge his beaten brother, says Oleg Troshin, head of the investigative department of the investigative committee for the Penza region. But none of those who, according to Sergei, offended him, suffered. And in general, whether he was beaten or not is an unproven fact. An even less plausible assumption is that Bychkov, under the impression of computer toys, went to kill in reality, as well as that he was trying to prove to some girl how cool he was. There are no computers at Bychkov's house, and he was friends with the girl Olya in the 8th grade. After school, she went to another city and got married there. After that, he didn't date anyone. He didn't have any girlfriend, neighbors, teachers, former classmates from the lyceum, partners from the car wash confirm. Acquaintances even laughed at him. "Why don't you get a girl?" Bychkov was charged with 6 murders. Involvement in the other 3 had to be proved. Former resuscitator Vladimir Baskakov has not found another missing person. They say about both of them, like the rest of the victims, they are drinkers. If Bychkov's guilt is proven, he faces a life sentence. Now everyone blames the police and the investigation for this story. How was this allowed? Why did they look for a maniac for a long time and put a mentally ill Zhuplav in general? By the way, his case will be reviewed due to newly arisen circumstances. It is possible that Zhukov and Bychkov initially chose victims together. Only there is a discrepancy. Two of the dead were even before Kutuzov, for whom Zhuplav was sent for compulsory treatment. And yet, the fact that an innocent person was punished perhaps, and a real maniac was detained 3 years later, is the fault of all Belinsky. When terrible murders and long searches for criminals take place in megacities, it can be explained somehow. When in a small town where everyone knows each other by sight, it's unlikely. Why didn't people unite, as in Bryansk, to search for the missing girl? They preferred to whisper. The Sukharev's earring is missing. But no one blabbed that Bychkov was seen several times in blood-stained clothes. He himself told during the interrogation, even called the names and surnames of those who met him in those evenings. These passers-by were called to the police. Yes, Sashka was covered in blood then, they confirmed. But who knows, maybe he got into a fight with someone. They didn't get in touch. There was no concern for the Bychkovs and the social protection authorities. In small towns and villages, almost every third of such families. You'll get tired of checking everyone. Officials were modestly silent. They didn't want the notoriety of their quiet town. In the end, it was the drunkards who disappeared, not their respectable relatives. Tied up stealing knives for another murder. On the night of the 21st of January, 2012, Alexander Bychkov broke into the Everything for Home store and stole 3 garden knives and money totaling about 10,000 rubles. An orientation was drawn up for the criminal. Short stature, slim build. Also, despite the fact that Bychkov was not distinguished by a large physique, the killer had a fairly high physical strength. Since childhood, his mother forced him to carry heavy things in the garden. As Bychkov explained later, he went to steal because he was tired of spending money. After all, he bought new knives for each victim, and then they were buried separately from the bodies. The policeman detained him coming out of the forest after another murder, but after checking the documents, he let him go. And a few days later, a corpse was found in this forest. Outside surveillance was established for Chikatilo. He was detained after going to the polyclinic, where he did an X-ray of a finger that one of the victims broke. In addition to this crime, he confessed to the murders committed earlier. During a search of the suspect's house, his personal diary was found, in which 11 murders were described. Also, during the search, a large number of films containing scenes of violence were found. During interrogations, Bychkov admitted that he sometimes cut out his victims' internal organs, liver, heart, and ate them. Based on the examination, the killer was found sane. On December 28, 2012, the prosecutor of the Penza region approved the indictment against Bychkov. Under subparagraphs A to Part 2 of Article 105 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. Murder, that is, intentionally causing the death of another person, the murder of 2 or more persons. Murder in order to conceal another crime. Part 1 of Article 244 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, abuse of the body of the deceased. Paragraph B of Part 2 of Article 158 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. Theft with illegal entry into the premises. The accused refused a jury trial. The court found 9 episodes proven. Alexander Bychkov was found guilty on points of Part 2 of Article 105 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. Murder of 2 or more persons, as well as committed in order to conceal another crime or facilitate its commission, as well as those involving rape or violent acts of a sexual nature. And paragraph B of Part 2 of Article 158 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. Theft committed with illegal entry into the premises. The facts of cannibalism could not be proved. On the 22nd of March, 2000 of the 13th year, the Penza Regional Court sentenced him to life imprisonment, with serving his sentence in a special regime colony. The convict and his defender, who did not agree with the verdict, filed complaints with a higher authority. The Judicial Board for Criminal Cases of the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation, having considered the complaint, left the verdict unchanged, and the complaints were not satisfied. Bychkov is serving his sentence in the FQ and K5 on the island of Ognenaya in the Vologda region. The mother of the criminal still does not believe that all 9 murders were deliberately committed by her son. Maybe they got into a fight, knocked or stabbed with a knife. Maybe. 1 person. But not 9 people, the woman believes. It is alleged that a few years ago, Bychkov had a wife, Kristina Var, who was trying to extradite the convict to America so that he could be released. According to Bychkov's mother, they had a son. Currently, Bychkov's American wife is trying to start the procedure for his renunciation of Russian citizenship. There is no official response yet.